Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's Illuminate session, where we're speaking with Vered Segal about the Darkness Whisperer. Vered is an inspirational leader and motivational speaker, specializing in helping others to break patterns to create the life that they want. Her passion is to empower people to realign with their inner strength by shifting their mindset to unlock their fullest potential. She's a registered craniosacral therapist, quantum touch energy practitioner, holistic life coach, movement facilitator, and vocal sound healer. Vered takes all of these modalities and fuses them together to create a unique experience of deep healing, which leads to lasting change. So, welcome, Vered, and thank you so much for joining me here today.
Thank you. So good to be with you.
Yes. So the Darkness Whisperer, it sounds so intriguing. Can you share
Yeah.
a little bit with us about what does it mean to be a Darkness Whisperer and what does that look like?
Okay, so really good questions. So I think in all healing, it's like, what are we healing? We're healing the parts of us that really don't feel good, that
Hmm.
are like the parts of us that we really just want to resist, that we want to kind of pretend that they're not here, you know? And so even on my journey, like I had a lot of rage, like in my own healing journey, there was so first I had to be the darkness whisperer for myself.
Yes.
So yeah, so I used to like hate the parts of myself. I used to hate the parts of myself that got angry, that reminded me of what my parents are, like that, because I come from there's a line of rage, and I got that. So when I got into, a life situation where there was a huge crisis, it's like a lot of rage was coming out. And the thing is, what I had to do was I had to sit with myself, and I had to start getting okay with the parts of myself that weren't okay. Like
Yeah.
there had to have been some sort of like a 0 point with me. And I was never able to hate myself enough into stopping to do the things that I wanted to stop doing. So I wasn't able to hate myself enough or shame myself enough or yell at myself enough to stop the rage. Like it just wasn't, to stop the anger, and to stop all of that. So what I do is like it's like I had to disrupt the pattern. Okay,
Hmm.
and part of disrupting the pattern is getting on the same page as the pattern. It's like starting to recognize the pattern and almost like neutralize it just for what it is. It's like, oh, there's rage, for example, right? And rage would be considered a real darkness, I would say. I think rage is darkness. Okay.
Yeah.
It's like the opposite of light, right? Because if it was light, there would be no rage. There would just be love. There would be love and light and happiness and no anger and no rage and no nothing.
Yeah.
But there was obviously patterns inside of me and my system that were not able to be seen, from childhood patterns that grew up. And then it was like always the suppression, the suppression of emotions and not being able to be myself and all of that stuff. And that came to a head at a point in my life when it was the right time, I guess. And I had and what I did was is I sat with myself and I started to get okay with it. And not only get okay with it, I started to just to even to fall in love with it,
Hmm.
and to say, I love you, I see you. And the things that were bringing up the rage, I started to validate the parts of myself that were so upset because this happened and this and somebody did this and
Yeah.
these things happened to you. And so like I started to just sit there, and as I was sitting in the silence heals. Silence heals.
Yes.
But the reason why we don't sit in silence is because there's a lot of patterns that make us think that we're going to die, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So once I understood, I could just sit there and not die, right? And then I could fall in love. So good, right?
Yeah.
And then I was able to fall in love with the patterns. So then I was able to say, oh, and just to validate the parts of myself that were so angry.
Yeah.
And ironically, the more that I fell in love with the parts that I hated, ironically, they just like transmute, like they just like transmuted themselves
Yes.
into, I just felt more wholeness in my life.
Yeah.
So yeah, so just to fast forward a little bit when we're doing this healing, because that's a healer. What is a healer? A healer, like I'm a healer for myself. And then I help to facilitate other people's healing.
Yeah.
So when people come to me and they're on my table or we're working remotely, we basically are tapping into where is there like a lower energetic frequency. Okay, where's their rage, where's their regret, where's their guilt, where's their shame, where is the stuff that really feels really really yucky.
Yeah.
And then it's like starting to talk to that part and just
Yes.
to kind of like whisper to it. That's the darkness whisper, I feel like, because what I found is like it's almost like magic. It's like magic. We start talking to those parts. It's like, yeah, of course you feel shame. That makes so much sense. And that's okay. And and I and we just start loving it, or like, yes, that's where the guilt is coming from. But so basically it's just kind of tapping into what the emotion is feeling itself, the parts of us that we're feeling, that they're feeling, the
Yeah.
parts that don't feel so good. and and then all of a sudden I'm watching it like shift, and my clients are shifting.
Yes.
Okay, can I give you like a little, I'm going to give you like a little example that happened today. I
Yeah.
was thinking about this.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I had there was a this man on my table, and he's had like chronic headaches, and he's had a lot of like pain in this area. And it was the first time I worked on him, and I had my hands in, and I was seeing how there wasn't so much movement. And so I actually started to talk to that telepathically, like I'm not talking out loud to it.
Yeah.
Sometimes I do, like sometimes I do this with my clients. But I started to say to it, I was like, oh, that's okay. You're in pain. You're in so much pain. You don't even want to move.
Mm.
Oh, that's okay. I got you. I got you. I feel that. And it was like the most amazing thing. It started to shift in my hands. Like I started to watch the pattern shift while it was just allowed to be there. So
Yes.
it's ironic, but that's what it is. And it's like, we hear animal whisperers, like lion whisperers. People like lions don't attack the lion whisperers. They like, right? But
Yeah.
that's what it is. It's like the shadow self thinks that, and it acts like it's like this, like a lion, like a dangerous monster. But really all it is like, it's like a little animal, and it just wants to be loved. It wants to be
Yeah.
seen, and it really wants to be acknowledged and seen and allowed. And when it is, it gets to move, and it gets to heal, and the body ends up healing itself. So anyway, so that's like a
100%.
little
No, I love that. I love the example
yeah.
of it. And
Mhm.
I also love how you talk about these parts, that it's
Mhm.
not, your client is a rageful client. It's there's a
Yeah.
part within the client that has this rage. Because I
Yeah.
think for so many people, we don't want to admit that we have rage or that we have anger or that we have shame or that we have regret, because then it's like it becomes all of us instead of
Mhm.
just this part of us that just feels this way. And I think when we separate it, then we're able to actually talk to it and see, okay, why are you so angry? Why are you so ashamed of what your experience has been? And it sounds like such a beautiful process that you're offering to yourself and to your clients.
Thank you. Okay, I'm like I
No,
keep
go
going.
ahead. Go ahead.
Because it's interesting, because specifically on anger, which is a very interesting, it's an interesting animal actually, because anger is a secondary emotion. And so when people are feeling the anger, it's usually to something, usually they're like, they're so angry, and it's sometimes it's disproportionate to the event that's happening.
Yeah.
Okay. Sometimes it's right on, but the thing about anger is very interesting, because anger is an amazing gift. It shows you when there's been a boundary violation.
Yeah.
Like when something has happened that's like not okay with like our inner being, you know? And the thing is that it happens a lot like when we're kids, and if you have a parent that's emotionally dysregulated or something, and you're really not, then you kind of you have anger as a kid, like there's anger, but it also has to like shut up because your safety is involved, right?
Yeah.
So like then we create like these survival patterns that are like, okay, like I can't, I know that I'm feeling this, I can't feel this, and we're not conscious of it, but we can't feel it because your actual survival depends on you not getting angry, because this bigger human that's like literally your life source, with shelter and food and clothing and safety in all ways, is supposed to be protecting you, and they can't handle it, so they will either lash out or somehow suppress that. But then what happens is as we get older, we have certain patterns in us, and we know that it has not, like those patterns have not been seen in us. So So, and then something happens at the supermarket and like you're freaked out, or something happens with husband or wife and you're like, ugh, they're trying to suppress me, it's like, I hate them. Like, and it's a real thing. It's like a real anger, but what is it bringing up? It's bringing up original trauma.
Yeah.
It's bringing up stuff. So it's like, it's kind of perfect for you, but also we have to deal with it and own and take responsibility for our anger
Yeah.
as ours first, right? But then also, um, be able to work it out. So when we're working this out with a practitioner, when I'm working this out with a client, it's like, great, this is the space where we work this out, because we're never going to be able to work our anger out on another person and get a real healing. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't,
Yes.
like, you're not going to be able to like to yell or to rate, you're not going to be able to get there. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying that people should be able to abuse you or anything like that, but I'm saying as far as the anger, because it's like we have to be able to somehow allow the patterns that are really like activated,
Yeah.
we have to allow them to be seen so that way they could transmute, and so
Yeah.
that way they can be healed, so that way we could come from a place of neutral. And as we get a little bit more neutralized and less activated, when there's more neutrality in ourselves because we've already honored and dealt with this, then it's like we can have an insight. Then it's like, then we have the ability to access higher level intelligence,
Yeah.
so that way we could be able to actually deal with the situation in a mature way, in a way that will actually be effective, right? So
Absolutely.
yeah. Okay, so it's interesting. Yeah.
It's absolutely interesting. And I love when you're talking about, you can't yell your way into healing if you're like angry with someone. And you had originally said that with that part of you when the anger or the rage was showing up and you couldn't hate yourself enough to change it, right? Like we can't meet anger with anger and expect it to shift. We have to meet it with love. We'd have to meet it with that understanding so that it's willing to actually speak to us about what is actually going on. Because to me, the anger is just like a protection mechanism to go, whoa, stop, but what else is going on underneath that?
Yeah, exactly. Yes, yes, yes.
So, how do you guide people to understand what is that pattern coming up for them? How do you
Mhm.
help them what would you suggest to the people who are watching this to understand what their own patterns are when it comes to those childhood experiences and what they might be experiencing now?
Okay, cool. So I think if it's okay, maybe I could just talk about the modalities and then I'll talk about how
Sure.
to, yeah, does that work? Okay. Because I was just thinking about it, because it's different. Sometimes it could be different if somebody's on the table, right? Because, and then, or if I'm doing like a remote session, but then we'll also be able to talk about how, yeah, like how you can just see that if just by getting into a space. So I just want to say, like, so craniosacral therapy, I was a client of it for like 13 years before I had the honor of actually being trained in it, which is kind of wild to me because it really supported like all of my emotional growth. Like anytime I had a cognitive shift where I wanted to shift, it got my body on board with it.
Mm,
Okay.
okay.
So craniosacral therapy is amazing because it actually works with the stress patterns, or they would be called like an inertial pattern. Or, okay. And that's actually a physical thing because when we have enough things that happen in our life, um, our bodies, because our bodies are always working with our health. So what it's doing is to get you through these hard times where the body cannot process the emotions because they're too big. Like that's kind of one of the definitions of trauma, is like something that happens that the body can't process yet. So what happens is the body keeps it, right? Like the body keeps the score. There's
Yeah.
a book on that. So the body processes it, and then there's inertial patterns inside. And then what happens is, our thoughts create our feelings create our thoughts. Like then there's like this cycle. So we start like looping, and it's kind of hard to get out of that loop. But a way to get out of it actually is to like, as I was just talking about it, is to kind of getting settled. Part of craniosacral therapy is actually working with those inertial patterns physically in the body. So that's why I always feel like it's a somatic work. Somatic is part like in the body. So I feel like at this point, when real healing is coming, I really believe that we all like need somatic work, like
Yeah.
body work. So that way the body can also release, because it's one thing to have a cognitive shift, and it's another thing to like get in touch with the body's system where there is like a pattern that's being held, and it needs to kind of, I guess I would say, like feel safe enough that it can resolve its own pattern, thereby creating more flow in the body,
Okay.
which is more alignment and more life and more access to your own health. So that way the body can kind of, it kind of realigns itself to almost like before the the trauma or the stress pattern occurred, if that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So okay, um so what happens is when I'm working with somebody, they're going to bring up, usually they'll bring up a situation that's happening and they're upset about it. And if it's remote work, like if it's energy, um, and the energy healing that I do is actually informed also by the craniosacral therapy, which is really cool because it's like all about anatomy. Craniosacral therapy is like all about like your physical body and the anatomy, and it's also spiritual in a way.
Okay.
Um, so it's kind of just tapping in and seeing like where is it hitting that we can't move forward, like where is there a loop where like we can't move. So is the person, so is there so as the story unfolds, we're just going to feel it out and see what energetically doesn't feel right, like what is um for example, like if there's a pattern of like a victim pattern, right? There's a pattern of I'm like, why does this always happen to me? Okay, why does this always happen to me? I'm just picking something
Yeah.
random. Okay, so so usually I'll feel that, and a lot of times it'll be in the solar plexus, because that's where our power center is, like in the energy systems in our body. So 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 as my hands are on the client, or if it's remote, I'm doing the energy work like in that system, like right where that is. And and it's kind of like, okay, so it kind of it's like, yeah, tell me more about that. Well, it's not fair, this always happens, and it used to, and I said, okay, well, where's the, we could go through like, okay, well, that's so interesting, it's just interesting. And then it's like, well,
Yeah.
where's the, what what does it remind you of, like where do you think that came from, like why do you think that the part, where do you think that originally kind of originated from, like what does that
Yeah.
remind you of, and it's not for psychoanalysts, it's just kind of like to kind of see where it started. And it's like, oh, well, my mom, she was always criticizing me, and like I couldn't get anything right, and no matter what I did, I couldn't get anything right. So it's like, oh, okay, that's amazing, that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so it makes so much sense. And so then we work with that, and we actually talk to the part that is feeling like we're always a victim, like we can't get anything right. It's like it makes so much sense. And now we are the larger version. And I always, we're the space that, I know Kyle Cease talks about this. We are the space where all of these emotions exist in,
Yeah.
and the emotions are just there. So now when we're just looking at them, we're just like watching and talking to it. So it's like, oh, yeah, that makes so much sense that you feel that way. I could even go into, how old do you think that pattern is, right? Oh, well, it's like 5 or it's 7 or whatever, right? And we just talk to this little kid, and it's like, you're feeling like nothing you do is right. You're feeling like you can't do anything right. Oh my gosh, that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Of course you feel that way. Of course you feel like you can't do anything right. And it's so interesting because then like patterns are like shifting energetically in the body, but also like the client, all of a sudden it's opening up, and
Mm.
every session is different and everybody experiences it in a different way.
Yeah.
And and as that's happening, they're like, yeah, well, how does that feel? And it's like, ironically, it actually feels good. It feels validating. It feels
Yeah.
like, oh, right. And then it's so ironic because then it's like they get their power back,
Yeah.
and yeah. So for anybody listening, right, it's like, what are the stories that are coming up, and how can you like basically just to look at it. We always think that our thoughts are like 100% true. Like we actually think like, oh, everything always happens to me, like as if that's like a fact, right?
Yes. Yes. The ego makes it so believable, right? It's the
Right.
most dramatic of all the things. And it's like, it always happens to me. If you sit in silence, we're going to die. Like, it really just over dramatizes all of it.
Right, exactly. So as it's doing that, I would offer for somebody, if you're doing this at home, or if you want to do, you could actually just write it out. What is the thought that you're thinking that keeps on looping? Okay.
Okay.
And then you can see, how does it make me feel? Oh, it makes me feel powerless. It makes me feel like a victim.
Yeah.
It makes me feel bad. So that's the unconscious programming that you have, because we all have programming. This is all like a program. We have our original program, and then we have the program that was kind of like our survival mechanism program, which
Yeah.
is like dealing with all of the darkness, which is dealing with the parts of us that are causing us discomfort.
Yeah.
So and then as that gets done, it's it's then seeing what can be a thought that can make that more neutral. Not like, oh, I'm not a victim, I'm so strong. Like, that's great if that feels right to you. But I would really offer, like, I would offer a statement or something that you could write that would be a little bit more neutral, like, oh, yeah, it makes sense. There was a lot of criticism growing up.
Okay.
It doesn't mean that it's true. It just means that, oh, that makes sense that I feel this way. And
Yeah.
just see how that feels and see how that shifts. This is all about kind of getting and feeling your body and
Yeah.
seeing how different thoughts are going to feel in your body. So
Okay.
does that make, so I feel like let me
No,
know if that
it
answers the
totally makes sense
question.
to me because it's sometimes when we have those kind of positive affirmations, okay, I'm strong and I'm never a victim, whatever, it's like that's such a high jump from what the current state was. And we do need to kind of take steps to be able to get to that really high thought. So just going, okay, so that makes sense. There was a lot of criticism. That actually seems a lot more neutral. And then perhaps from there, would you kind of encourage them to go into, I'm going to say, shifting those statements over time so that they can get to that higher statement, but like just start with kind of the first step first.
Yeah, I would say to start with the first step. And then you see, oh, that was critical. And then I would say, well, now how do you feel? And now what's the thought? Oh, the
Okay.
thought is that it makes sense. Oh, it makes sense. I mean, and again, everybody's individual, so it's kind of like we're just kind of making stuff up here, but
Yeah.
this is kind of around, this is kind of what is possible that we could come up with. And it's like, oh, all right, let's say now the new thought is, oh, it makes sense that I'm not feeling so great because there was a lot of criticism, right? Or that things always happen to me. Um, so then maybe I would offer something like, it's okay. Like, it's okay that sometimes I feel like things are always happening to me. I guess I would just really work with the darkness for a minute. You know what I mean? Like, I
Yeah.
kind of would just work with it, and I would just go with it. I know this is like that. There is like this exercise of like a thought download, which is kind of what I did with it, like just right now as an example. But I would kind of go into it and just be like, yeah, that also makes sense. It makes sense, and also it's okay that I feel like that. Um, and also there's many times, or there's sometimes when things go okay. So I guess I would also challenge, like, is it 100% true?
Mm,
Are things always happening to you? Always, like 100% of the time?
yeah.
Like, so you are like not okay 100% of the time. So, and then they're like, no. I'm like, did you have breakfast today? Yeah, I ate something. I'm like, oh, okay. So was that okay for you? Did you feel better after you ate? It's like, yeah. I was like, oh, okay. It's like, it's just kind of getting us out. You just want to kind of get out. It's like just kind of showing like the other side also. Like, it's
Yeah.
not like you're always a victim. So okay, so now we could change, because there's a belief, there's some sort of a belief system that things are always happening to me.
Yeah.
So I guess what we could also do is kind of look at, well, is there times when it's not happening? Like, did you go into a car today? Like, were you safe? How did you get to my session? Like, how did we even get on the phone? Oh, are you able to pay your phone bill? oh,
Yeah.
okay, so things aren't always happening to you, but sometimes things happen that don't really feel great. And then I would offer, and as I begin to heal, I'm going to see how things are going to start shifting on the inside. I'm going to be so curious to see how things are going to shift on the outside and how things are going to start working out for me more and more.
Mm,
That's what I would go. Oh my God, yeah.
yeah.
Like I would go like into the curiosity to see how we could shift that, and to see where it could go. And that's, in the right time, and as it's there's an opening for that. But
Yeah.
yeah, curiosity is amazing in that way because it kind of gets our brains to work in our favor.
Yes, yes. Because the brain, if it's on like this loop of everything's always happening to me, that curiosity allows you to kind of start to break free from that so that you can start to see what is actually working out for you. And I love that you ask them these kind of questions of things that would show them that the opposite of that belief is also true for them.
Right.
Because it's
Yeah.
so important, I think, especially when we've got those thought loops that are just going and going and going. It can be so hard to break free of that thought loop if you don't have someone who's kind of going, hey, wait a second, is that 100% true? And even
Yeah.
more so, do you want it to continue to be true?
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Like, are we wanting to continue this or are we wanting to kind of see what we can disrupt?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and it was actually just reminding me of somebody that I was working with today, and I work with a lot of people in the religious community as well, and so we all have like versions of like God, right? And it's
Yeah.
like, and so it's like, okay, I just have to trust God, and it's like, yes, we know we're supposed to trust God. Okay, amazing, we know, but the thing is that we can't go from feeling like crap to, oh, okay, I trust God. Like you could do that, but we're going to miss a couple of steps that make it like a holistic experience of
Yeah.
your fullness and your relationship with your creator. Okay. So, um, so she's like, okay, well, I just pray to God and I say, oh, I trust you. I trust you. And I'm like, yeah, but you know what? God also knows that you don't trust him, him and him.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like we can't trick the energy. Like we have to meet it where it is.
Yeah.
So part of like this darkness whispering thing is kind of like, you can also just tell God, just be like, there's a part of me that really trusts you. Okay. And then there's a part of me that really doesn't trust you. Or there's a part of me that feels really scared.
Yeah.
So I'm really going to need your help. And I really would love to trust you more. So please show me how that could be possible.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I was like, how does that feel? And she's like, oh, that actually feels better. Because it's like we're not hiding from anything, It's like it's like, okay, I trust. This is what I do. I do this. I trust, and that's it. And it's like, okay, but also you don't, because if you did 100%, like we wouldn't be in this situation.
Yeah.
So, and that's okay. There's no judgment for it. That like we obviously were created to be like humans, to be
Well,
humans.
and that's just it, that God also created the part of you that doesn't trust God, right?
Yes,
So, like,
right,
God's like, yeah, I kind of knew that already.
right.
Put that right in the design.
Right in the design. And so the cool part about this is as we heal, we want to incorporate that the like God into our lives. We want to incorporate the
Yeah.
creative self and the spiritual self, our actual creator into it. So how do we do that? We want to include, it's not like this separate thing that's outside of me that's like
Yes.
a punishing God. It's like, oh,
Yes.
blah, 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 and I'm out here and I'm here to test you. It's like, well, not really, right? It's not really like that. Well, actually, the truth is, and this is what I keep sharing. I think this is so important because this was like a real revelation for me, is that I had to write out like all my characteristics of what I thought God was.
Mm,
Okay. And I had to be so honest because I was already like I went through a whole, the religious experience and everything. So I understand where it's coming from, where it's like, we know God because of what we learn.
yeah.
But then I actually had to heal and to recover from like the trauma patterns and the things that I went through. And I had a really good mentor, and she basically told me to write out all of the ideas and all of the things that I think God is. And I was like, oh, God is omnipotent, and he's all loving, and he's all powerful, and he's all and and the healer, and also he's out to get me, and he likes to watch me suffer. Like I had to get super super honest.
Yeah.
Like he laughs at me. He laughs at me sometimes, and he enjoys watching. That's a good one. He enjoys watching me suffer. Okay, and and then um and then she's like, okay, like, and I had this whole big list, and it's like, okay, so who does that remind you of? And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, that's my dad.
Yeah.
I'm like, I mean, really, it's my perception of him. You know what I mean? Like I had
Yeah.
to, and it was like, and it was a combination. It was a long list. It was a list. So then it was basically like, okay, so that's not actually God. So the reason why I'm saying this is because so many people, like, we have this preconceived notion of what God is.
Yeah.
And I just want to offer that it's really what happens is our parents, in their very much humanness, even parents that are amazing parents,
Yep.
they are human. And in their humanness, that's our first experience of God.
Yes.
Okay. Which is, by the way, which is why it's so amazing as a parent to like work on yourself, because then you're going to be allowing the space for yourself and for your child to grow as much as possible without as many stress patterns. Like we could eliminate that if
Yeah.
we could grow and work on ourselves.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting kind of working with this, because often I have to remind my clients that's not God. That's actually human characteristics that we're
Yeah.
placing on God, because we're really projecting a parental role that we're upset with, or that we feel like is
Yeah.
testing us or doing something like that's what like dysfunctional parents do, is test you or laugh at you or what, or punish you, or
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And they don't even mean they just didn't get to do the work that we have the privy to do right now,
Yeah.
so that we could work out our stuff.
Yeah.
So it's almost, so once we can recognize that, I'm like, what if that's not it? And sometimes we have to use not the word God, because if it's a very religious like association, sometimes it's like creator, like,
Yeah.
sometimes we need to go to a more neutral thing that could be, it's kind of like let go of what we think, of
Yeah.
what our preconceived notions are of God, and like let our own creator come up inside of
Mm.
us, and show us the love, and show us all of this.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mhm.
I went through my own I call it the reconciliation with God, where I after our first Camino experience and everything that happened with that, and I was so angry at God, and I was like, why are you always punishing me? Why are you always taking everything away from me? Why do you keep abandoning me? And it was all this. I could look at my parents and say the exact same thing. I was looking at God and saying it, but really what it came down to was when things didn't go the way that my ego wanted things to go, I was the one who was actually turning away from God and going, fine, I'll do it my way. Right. And so it was such a huge uh, revelation for me to come to that and to understand that throughout my life, my pattern was actually to turn away from God every time life got really hard. Instead of going into my divinity, I would go into my suffering and choose that suffering over and over again instead of going back into that divinity. So it was a huge like shift for me.
That's amazing. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, 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 yes.
Yeah.
This is the work. Like, this is what we get to do.
Yes,
Like, this
right?
is what we get to do. Oh my gosh. Like, that's amazing.
Yes, and it's so funny. You get so excited, like this is the work we get to do, and I feel the same way. Where it's like the pain and the suffering that I went through. Oh, but the revelation, that's the work we get to do. Yes, yes. Oh,
Then we actually get to return to ourselves and like actually
yes.
experience our creator. Like, we actually get to experience life in a whole new way. We get
Yeah,
to be like, oh, we just like now we just had a pattern clear. Like what you just talked about, like you cleared your own pattern.
yeah,
You became your hero in your own story. You're such a freaking hero. I mean, I know you're a hero because I know you, and you're amazing.
yeah,
And that's what you do. And then you help other people, and your whole thing of compassion. I know your compassion with Catherine. It's amazing,
yeah,
because it's like that's a darkness whisperer saying,
yeah,
like, you could, of course talk about it, but if like, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry, we're like talking to the pattern, like, I'm so sorry. I hope it's okay that I'm talking about your modality, but I know because I've worked with you. And it's so, so helpful because it's like, you're just kind of like acknowledging, like, I'm so sorry. Like, I'm so sorry you believe those lies. Like,
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. I'm sorry, that you didn't feel, God the way that I was meant to be, like talking from
Yeah.
that, from God, to you, but that just, it's so amazing because like that's what we do is like when we're willing to go into the pain and experience the darkness and experience it, it's like we actually become the heroes of our own story, and then
Yes.
we're diving into it. And
Yes.
really, and we're so afraid of dying, but the ironic part is like we don't die, the part that's killing us dies.
Yes. It's so ironic.
So ironic, it's so ironic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's important for the people that are listening right now to understand, like, so you and I, when we first started talking, we were both just kind of dabbling on the surface of our darkness, right? And we would share little bits with each other of like, hey, this is the darkness. But I feel like we even put like, flower stickers and stuff on the darkness at that point in time to go like, so this is my darkness, but I'm going to make it as pretty for you as I can, and
Yeah.
it, there's such a vulnerability that comes with tapping into that darkness and allowing someone else to witness that darkness as well. And I think that's such a beautiful gift that you're bringing forward to people because a lot of people haven't actually been witnessed in their darkness. It's been like this big dark secret that they have to, protect themselves from feeling, but also to not let anybody witness it. And I think the healing truly happens just from someone witnessing it, validating it, speaking to it, and going, yeah, that makes sense that you're here.
Oh my gosh, yes, that's exactly. Even witnessing something, even witnessing a person will help to shift them. It's so true. And that's exactly what it is. It's like we that's exactly why we sometimes we do need a facilitator for that exact reason. Like if we were able to just shift it out of ourselves, it would be, but that the pattern is coming from such a, like when you, I don't know, you did something right now like this, it's like coming from such a like a wounded child place,
Yes.
that and like the reason why it wasn't being able to be processed is for that reason. It's like frozen,
Yeah.
and it needs to defrost. So we have to be in an environment where we trust the person that's facilitating the session, and we have to feel, because once that is established, when there is safety in the session, then our bodies can go into parasympathetic, and then we can actually start working with what there is. But when you're constantly just out on your own and you're just fight, it's like then we're just looping and looping, and we kind of, like, I know for myself, like I can't just like jump out of it and heal, because if I was able to do it, I would have already been able to do it. This wouldn't have even been an issue.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's what it is. It's like we need the space to facilitate um what's it called, like well, we just need the ability to have all the things in alignment where our bodies can feel safe enough that it could process that with a facilitator. Like when we're doing these modalities, especially with the body work or energy or whatever, but with the facilitator, it's allowing it to show itself. um and it's like it's a joint effort,
Yeah.
because the facilitator, like, I'm holding that space only because, like, I could take my client as deep as I've gone, right? So like that's why we do this work, because it's like the more that we do our own work, the more we have availability for other people, and to
Yeah.
have them be able to experience whatever it is on the table that they, or in the session and on Zoom or whatever it is, to be able to experience that. And it's just holding this alignment, and this, actually, it's like a spiritual strength, so and
Yes.
it's like, it's mirroring, and it's allowing the body to know, like, it mirrors. So there's a part of the client's nervous system that picks up that we're a safe person, that this is okay, we can release this, we can cry, and we could, like, move, and
Yeah.
there's somatic releases that happen, and this stuff can start to move, and it can continue, and the journey can continue, and then and then you could sit in silence on your own, like then, like it's not like like you have to always be in a session in order to heal this stuff, right?
Yeah.
But it's like the body has to feel safe enough
Mm.
initially to start the process of being able to unravel the patterns that have been really torturing you.
Yeah.
It's like the trauma happened once, but it's like it doesn't, it's like then it tortures you for the rest of your life until you, and like then more stuff like ends up adding to it until it can actually be seen and released. And it's oh my goodness. No, it's exciting, but I was going to say what you were saying in just the watching of the pattern. um it ends up shifting itself
Yeah.
as it's happening. So, and then what I find is sometimes people sometimes they need sometimes the sessions first, to go through and to work out a little bit more of the trauma before they could sit with themselves.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? Because otherwise it's like too much. You could actually re-traumatize yourself if you like literally sit with yourself and you force, and like you have to be able to like work with yourself in your own system if you're going to do this on your own and sit
Yeah.
with yourself.
And,
So I
and I
feel like
think that's where you, as the facilitator, are bringing such a benefit to people because you're able to kind of separate, like, this is the trauma, this is the pattern, this is the person. And so you're showing them this is how you can do it because to sit in silence with that trauma and with those thought patterns, sometimes if you're not able to separate that, it becomes like kind of bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and no one's stopping it, right? If that
right.
loop is going and no one's stopping it, you can really start to believe a story that's not 100% true, but it becomes more and more true the longer you're telling yourself that.
Yes, exactly. So exactly. And that's where we have like whispering to the darkness. It interrupts the pattern.
Yes.
It interrupts the pattern. We get to
Yeah.
just get in there with the darkness and we kind of like work with it. And it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, I see you. That sucked. Really, really was painful.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh yeah, it really was painful.
Yeah.
Oh, right. And then it's like, oh, more
Beautiful.
space. Yeah, more space. Because that's what we need more space.
Yeah.
It's about space. I feel like we just expand and we just make more safe space. We make more space for ourselves to be ourselves. We come more into our true self, the part of us that is really wanting to come up.
Yeah.
I was just working with somebody like it's like a fear pattern came up because she was just being her authentic self. And she was talking to some ladies and she heard her husband, going out the door. And she's like, oh no, what if you heard me say so? And she didn't say anything wrong, but she got this fear. And it was so interesting that it's like, oh, the fear pattern, that's a fear pattern that just came up. It has nothing to do with him. It has to do with her just being herself. And no matter what, she's just going to be wrong. Like if
Mm.
that's the thing, like when we're in our authentic, that's why we're so afraid because of the patterns that we've had, like all of the parts, like, and the trauma, like a lot of things that happen. And then it suppresses us and we suppress ourselves and we get really, really scared and we don't realize it actually has nothing to do. And then you get resentful of husband or then you're scared of husband. And
Yeah.
it's like, it actually has nothing to do. He just happens to be there. And you have this projection because, right? Because you have a pattern of being scared of dad. And, and so it's interesting also is like recovery from codependency in a way actually
Yeah.
is really what this is. It's about kind of like tapping into ourselves. And it's just like part of this is one part is going into the fear that is not coming from an adult mind. Like this is not coming from like a higher consciousness. That thought and that fear was not coming from an emotional higher consciousness, right?
Yeah.
That is coming from something that is like really child, like scared, like, oh no, like I did something, right? Just from being
Yeah.
myself, I just did something, like I can't do that. And so that's it. And so we worked with that. And I was like, what if fear was just like, what do you love? Do you love? She's like, I love babies. I was like, okay, so what if fear was just like a little baby? Like, what if you could just be a little baby? And
Yeah.
just like, okay, like what would we do with this little baby? We wouldn't be like, oh no, like you're right. We wouldn't like be freaked out with it, right?
Yeah.
What would we do? We would hold space for the baby. We'd be like, oh, sweetie, oh, you're scared. Okay, mama. I love you. You would do whatever you could to like comfort the baby, to give it compassion, to let it know, I'm here with you, sweetheart. I'm here with you. I love
Yeah.
you. I got you. I got you. And it's like once we went through that process, all of a sudden everything shifted. And she experienced like freedom. And then it was like, okay, and now can we just let other people be mad?
Mm.
Huh.
Yeah.
And like other people, and but it's not even true that he was mad, by the way. Not
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
true. But like,
Yeah.
but like, even if it was, like, I'm responsible for my emotions. That's what this healing work is. Even that whole thing that I did with the fear baby, like that's yours, right? Like that's what we
Yeah.
like. That's right. We have to get that, and we're responsible for our emotional well-being. And we want to have the tools, and we want to work with the facilitators that can help us to get to the place where we could be comfortable in our own skin.
Yeah.
And then we want to get these tools so that way we can recognize when our brain is kind of going off the, and then being like, oh no, like I have to control. We don't even realize sometimes how much we try to control other people's emotions. Like, oh, if
Mm.
I say this, then they're going to be upset. So I'm just not going to say it, or I'm going to say it and they're going to be upset. Like what if that doesn't even have to be a thing?
Yeah.
Like, what if we're not inherently bad? You know, like coming from the place of neutral, right? When
Yeah.
we could neutralize some of these patterns and we could get to the point of like, oh, wait, we're not bad. It's just we had a lot of patterns that were causing us to feel a lot of pain, that were causing us to suppress ourselves and then act all funky and weird because we were like trying to survive like a 7-year-old relationship with a parents, that just doesn't work when you're a grown adult. It just,
Yeah.
and then you have kids that trigger all sorts of things, right? And then right.
Yes.
So if we don't start doing that, it's going to come back in all any kind of form, because what that when patterns need to be seen, it's going to happen in the workplace. Like, it doesn't matter. You don't have to have a spouse. You don't you just have to be a human in this world, and it will work itself out.
Yeah.
That until the pattern is cleared, something is going to happen that is going to bring up the opportunity to heal it.
Yeah.
So we just want to offer ourselves the opportunity to sit with it, and to just see it, and to love it, to be a little bit more compassionate to the parts of us that have experienced that. um, and as that happens, as you get more okay with yourself, you start to get more okay with other people having emotions.
Mm.
It's
Yes.
okay. Kid feels disappointment. Amazing. It's hard. It's not easy,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it's okay. It's safe. Like, it's not dangerous when people feel disappointed, or when
Yeah.
other people have an emotion that is, you know, like, let's say even anger. And I'm not talking about an actual abusive situation.
Yeah.
In that case, you do need to remove yourself and you need to get the proper help. Okay. But in general, it's kind of like what happened with my client. It's kind of like certain things will happen, and our brain, our survival brain, will trigger it as if it's actually dangerous, and it's
Yeah.
actually not dangerous. So
Yeah.
so this is how we create safety in our own bodies, is we create the safety for ourselves to be able to experience the patterns and the emotions, and where is it in the body, and allowing it to move. I have an amazing, movement practice. When you move, energy moves.
Yeah.
And then, you kind of like watch it. And then as you do that, you have more space to allow yourself to live in your own body. And then you become your own refuge. You become a refuge for
Mm.
yourself,
Yep.
and a space of healing for yourself. And then all of a sudden, husband, kid, coworker, all of a sudden they could be how they are.
Yeah.
And then we just have more access to our own divine intelligence on how to maneuver. And that's where it gets really fun. It's like, oh, that's interesting that happened. Oh, that's painful. What did it bring up? Like exactly what you did when you said in the Camino. We're like, oh, that brought up a parent thing. I was just reacting to that. I was turning away from God. Like, I loved what you shared, because that's exactly what it is. It's like, so then how can I just feel what is coming up and allow it to be, own it, talk to it,
Yes.
love it, have some compassion for it. Okay.
100%. I have a tickle in my throat right now, apparently. No,
That's so awesome. We
isn't it?
love tickles in our throat.
Especially when we're supposed to be talking and welcome, tickle.
Well, interesting.
No, I love everything that you've shared with us today, Vered, and I think it's such valuable information for people to have at this point in time because there's a lot of people that are having a lot of these patterns that are being triggered right now and not necessarily realizing that they can actually heal it within themselves or go to a facilitator to start healing these things. Because I think a lot of us look at the external world, we go, well, if that changes and that changes and that changes, then I'll be at peace. But until it does, I can't be. Right. And
Right? And
we,
it's like literally the opposite. It's like literally when we do the work, then we can experience the peace. It doesn't ever happen in the opposite way. That's a lie of the mind. It's
yes.
another lie.
So
Little
one,
cute liar. I always say, like, oh, you cute little liar. You're so such a liar. Oh my gosh, my brain is lying again. Can I just say one thing?
yeah.
This is how we know. I'm going to tell you how we know. Okay. We know that it's a lie because of how it makes you feel. Every thought that you have um, is going to have an emotional charge with it.
Okay.
So, okay. So if I'm thinking like, what was the thing you just said? I don't know. Should I make
I,
something up?
about like the external, if this changes and this changes and this changes, I'll
Oh yeah,
finally
yeah,
be
yeah.
at peace.
Oh, okay. Yes, that's so good. That's so good. So it's like, oh yeah, once my boss changes or once this situation changes, then I'm going to feel peace in my life. Okay, so then you have to feel in your body. How does that make you feel when you say that?
Mm,
Do you feel more empowered? Or do you feel more disempowered and anxious and like, oh no, like,
yeah,
oh
because they're never going to change, right?
right. But you know that they're not going to change, but you're
Yeah.
like, well, if this does change, then I'm going to be better. But that's going to bring on probably anxiety. And a
Yeah.
lot of people have a lot of anxiety now, but it's not because the things that they're thinking are necessarily true. It's more because they're having a lot of beliefs and anxiousness based on like lies of the survival brain, lies of the mind.
Yeah.
So that's how you know it's not true because it will cause you to feel bad. It'll cause you to feel anxious. It'll cause you to feel something that just is not right in your system,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So then if you have a more neutral thought, and this is like kind of piggyback on what we were talking about before, if you turn that into, hmm, I'm responsible for how I feel now. And whether or not that changes, I've decided I'm going to stop giving away my emotional power to
Mm.
circumstances. And I'm going to see how can I reclaim my own power in my life with the things that I can control. So what am I thinking? Let's go. What's going
Beautiful.
on? Right? Thank you.
Yes. Yeah,
Good.
that's
It's
very
so good.
empowering. Very, very
Mm.
empowering. All
Yeah.
right. So I have
Yeah.
one last question
Okay.
for you that I like to ask all of my guests. So if you could share one message with the world right now, what would you want the world to know?
Ooh, that they are just so good. They're just that this is not an easy world to live in, but that they are amazing, that they have love inside of them that either they've accessed or they haven't accessed yet, but that we really do, that you really do get to create what you're wanting to experience. And you have way more power than you think that you have. The fact that your heart is beating and there's spirit running through your body and your organs are working and you are here, you are in purpose. I want you to know that you're in purpose. I want you to know that you're actually like magical. Like you're a magical, magical, magical being. And if you're not feeling that yet, it's only because there's some patterns that need to be healed in you. And as we heal those patterns, like then that is going to give you more and more access to who you truly are. Like you're not like there's not a mistake. Like you're not a mistake in this world. Like you are on purpose and you are loved. And the fact that you're here means you're loved. And I remember there was Mr. Rogers when I was little. Mr. Rogers would get on and he would say, you're good. You're loved. You're loving. And I used to argue. because I really didn't feel that way. I felt, no, you don't know me, I'm bad. Because that's
Mm,
how I felt about myself. I felt like
yeah.
I was bad. Okay. And now I'm like Mr. Rogers. I love it. Mr. Rogers sat in silence for like 2 hours a day. Okay. Did you? I don't know. I knew this
I
like
did
I
not
think,
know that,
yeah,
but that
yeah.
makes
This
sense
is
for
what I heard.
him.
And I'm just like, it totally does, right? And so I just want to say that, and there's gonna come a time that one, and I ended up, and now I know that that's true. I know that that's true. And I just want to offer and tell the world, like, we do not have to listen to the news of the world to make our reality. We're going to have to start changing it and shifting it, because it is not going to change. It is going to keep getting more and more and more crazy, because it is crazy. It's nuts what's going on. And the patterns that it's bringing up in us feels like it's unmanageable. But I want to say that you have more power than you think you do. The patterns that are coming up because they're wanting to be seen, they're wanting to be loved. And the more love and the more compassion that you can give yourself, and that you can work through and get yourself the resources to be able to be willing.
Mm,
Just be willing. If you even have the willingness to be willing, to have a different experience of this life, that another experience will be made. God will show up. Like, it is impossible for that not to happen. So that's what I want to say. Miracles are there. Miracles are possible. You're a miracle. The fact that you even exist. We are all miracles, and we're here in this, it's like this game of life and trying to figure it out. And it's like, but this is how we want to create the news. We don't want to be taking in all of this stuff and re-traumatizing ourselves. I want to offer that we have a whole system inside of us that is brilliant, that has been divinely created, and divinely, every nerve and ending. If you just learn a little anatomy, just learn a little bit of anatomy, and how this nerve innervates this muscle, and also this nerve and this, and they're actually connected and they work together. That we are meant to work together. We are meant to work together, but nobody can do this work for you, just like nobody can eat for you. So, but when you do start to do this work, this is where you're going to be able to give yourself the gift of life. And that is my prayer. That is my offering, is yeah, is that you are more than you think you are. And it's just going to be so exciting. I guess my message would be, just get on the dirty to like just discover and have so much fun, just to see who you actually are. Because man, when things start opening up, you start getting talents. I'm telling you, I never thought that I had anything going on with me, but that, and then we get to really, really start living. So that's my prayer for the world. That's my prayer for every single person listening, is to know that this is the way, and you are magic, and you are love, and you are light, and you are worthy. And I love
beautiful.
you. And I love you. I
And
love
I
you,
love you
Catherine.
too. Thank you
Thank
so much for joining me
you.
here today. For anyone who's wanting to work with Verid, you can find her on Instagram at Verid_Segal. You can email her at info@veridsegal.com, or YouTube at Verid Segal as well. So straight across the board, look up Verid Segal.
Yeah.
Thank
And
you so.
Facebook is Barrett Siegel 18
Oh, yep.
uh /Facebook.com. So go onto Facebook and you could message me and whatever. Anyway, yes. All good
Yes.
stuff. Thank
Yes.
you. Thank
Thank
you.
you so much, and have a great
So
night, everyone.
Bye.